how come
Airport West
is separate from
Airport Parkway?
It's a good question. It's a very good question.
Connect and Air Link.
Are both connected to
Airport Parkway
the station directly. Why not the
Waterline?
They aren't far from the rest at all. And let's dwell for a moment on the irony that
Airport Parkway
the station is actually closer
Airport West.
there is. Well, the first point we need to note is that most of the early stations in
Stepford,
and when I say early, I mean before the First World War, so basically all of them, were not originally built to connect directly with the mainline termini. If you wanted to change to the
Waterline,
you had to do what you do at
Airport Parkway,
i.e. leave the main station and enter a separate tube station.
Airport Parkway
Has this building here, which was once how you got into the
Air Link.
In the particular case of
Airport Parkway,
they didn't want to make it easy for people to get to
Waterline, Airport Parkway
was owned by the
Stepford
and North Western Railway. In retrospect, this all seems incredibly short-sighted, but as I have said before, the concept of an integrated public transport network didn't really come along in Britain until the 20th century, and well into the 20th century. It simply didn't occur to people that a quick in-station interchange was a good idea. Of course, as the 20th century progressed and American ideas about public transport took hold, people started to see the virtues of direct interchange at the termini without a lot of faffing about. But by then it was mostly too late. The stations were complete.
James Street
Was one of the few that got in on the ground floor, allowing the
Waterline
railway access from the beginning. On the ground floor? Should that be in the basement? Anyway, what tended to happen was that interchanges would be built in when stations came up for rebuilding. When the whole station was being rebuilt, it was much easier to throw in a couple of underground passageways. In some cases, they moved the entire station, which is why you've never used
James Street.
Some of you will no doubt be saying, hold on, smart guy, but
Airport Parkway
was rebuilt in the 20th century. It used to look like this. Your explanation makes no sense. Why must you lie like this? To which I would say, yes, you are correct. About the rebuilding, at least.
Airport Parkway
Was indeed rebuilt in the 1960s. At that time, a direct entrance to the
Connect
was built and
and Air Link.
was in the planning stages, so they could incorporate the new platforms into the new design. But what's key here is the time the rebuild happened, the 1960s. So when
Airport Parkway
it was originally built, there were carriage sidings under the station. When those were removed, they left a lovely big space. You could stick a passageway in there or whatever you liked. But in the 1960s, it was assumed that the railways were a dying form of transit and public transport would wither away in favour of cars. In fact, in some places, they were actively planning for a time when the railways would close altogether. So when British Rail saw all this space under the station, they thought, well, that'd be a nice place to put a car park. That car park sat between
Airport Parkway
and
Airport West.
blocking any potential passageway. Building anything else, say, below the car park, just wasn't considered worth it, economically speaking. So that's where we are today. The mistakes of the past are the problems of the present, because the lack of a direct link between the two stations has contributed to overcrowding on the
Connect and Air Link.
People either aren't aware of
Airport West
or don't want to leave
Airport Parkway
the station, so they often take the crowded
Connect and Air Link.
even when it would be easier to get to their destination from.
Airport West
This despite the fact that in real objective terms it's far from the worst change on the network. I think it's a psychological thing. People just think of the two as separate, and that creates a psychological barrier, so you think of them as being further apart than they actually are. But the future looks bright.
Airport Parkway
The station is being rebuilt again, and this is a massive modern rebuild. It has its downsides. This building will have to go, for instance. But it will improve local connections drastically. There is to be a travelator all the way to
James Street.
And finally, after 160 years, there will be a corridor connecting
Airport Parkway Airport West.
and this video will be obsolete. That was a waste of time, wasn't it?